Rabbi Joseph Pוטסניק, celebrating 35 years of religion on the line on 77 WABC.
Religion Online, brought to you by Sherman's Flatbush Memorial Chapel. Visit them online at shermanschapel.com. I want to talk to Ophir Dayan, who is in the studio with me today. Thank you for coming in, Ophir.
Thank you, Rabbi.
In a short time, you've become one of my heroes. Your father happens to be a hero of mine. Your father is a hero of mine because he's a proud representative of the State of Israel. He serves as Consul General of the State of Israel. And he's not afraid to stand in front of any audience talking about how important it is to protect your people. I see that the DNA of mom and dad has been instilled within you. So let's talk about what's happening in Colombia, what's happening to you. The story has received much attention. What I don't understand is I hear people talking about freedom of speech. Free speech, it's a fundamental right in our country. The trouble I see sometimes is there are people who talk about free speech for me, but not for you.
This is exactly the issue at Columbia University. Most pro-Israel students who are proudly and loudly pro-Israel face many attempts to silence them, many attempts that are seen in a way of demonstrating inside an event, taking the speaker out of the stage and making him not talk about Israel, tearing down our flyers when we invite people to our events. And this is only the things that happen to us as a group. And unfortunately, this is also happening to individuals, not in the sense of tearing down flyers, but when it comes to individuals, these anti-Israel groups are not afraid to, it even happened this week, send private messages to our board members, calling them hateful people, or calling some of the members of Students Supporting Israel murderers, Nazis, killers, baby killers. Of course, this has no factual basis. And they just go around calling us these names in order to delegitimize our presence and our stance on campus.
Of course, they have no trouble taking scholarships from monies provided by the board members. None of them are very generous with the school, so these students who protest you have no trouble, and protest board members have no trouble accepting funds. You are a student majoring in political science.
True.
What year are you at Columbia?
Sophomore.
Were you aware before you arrived on campus of some of the challenges you may have to confront?
Yes, in fact, that is the reason I chose to come to Colombia.
Really?
I figured after serving for 4 years in the spokesperson unit of the IDF, I worked with many international media outlets, and I understood that they have no real idea of what's happening in Israel, what are the challenges that Israel is facing, and I decided when I finished my service after 4 years to come here and fight this battle in a different arena. Not that of the media, but that of public opinion. When I heard about the situation in Colombia, I decided to come here and combine two things that I care about a lot, Israel and higher education in a very good and esteemed academic institution. So I came to Colombia. Unfortunately, what I found out was that the situation on the ground is much worse than I thought. And I think that is a lot due to the fact that the university is refusing to actually take measures and do things about the complaints pro-Israel students are posing to the university and its administrators.
Phil, one of the problems I find as well is that we have a number of students, and I think you mentioned this to me in a conversation we had earlier, there are a number of students, some of whom are Jewish, who are apathetic. You know, you have demonstrators, counter-demonstrators, but there's a significant segment that doesn't appear at all.
True. Not just Jewish, but Israeli students as well. And most of them, I cannot blame them. Columbia University became a very hostile place to Israelis and pro-Israel students. There are tenured professors who, for example, one of them, on the syllabus of his course, there's a book called The Invention of the Jews, speaking about how the Jews are an invented people. There are students on campus that took part in being pro-Israel, were involved with students supporting Israel, and then websites like Electronic Intifada published hateful and, of course, not true stories about them. And now when they're going to be interviewed for firms or other job interviews, this is what people see when they Google their name. So I can't blame most of them for not wanting to take a stand. And when they see that organizations like Students Supporting Israel filed a detailed complaint on January, and the university has still not taken any measures to punish the people who are violating university rules of conduct, why would someone be involved? Why would people want to risk themselves and their reputation when they know the university is not going to protect them?
I remember years ago, a group of us sat with the president of Colombia, the chairman of the board of Colombia, and we raised an issue that I'm sure still exists. There are students who are pro-Israel, who take courses with professors who happen to have a different view. They are afraid to challenge the professor in class because they feel if they do that, they're going to suffer academically. They're going to be given a grade that doesn't really represent, the value of their presentation.
I'll tell you more than that. In Colombia in 2018, pro-Israel students are not taking certain classes. There are certain classes and certain professors that we all know we cannot take their classes. And we have to avoid taking certain classes, going to different professors just to not be graded down. This is unacceptable. That students feel that they cannot take a certain class.
I'm listening to you and I'm saying, this is the Twilight Zone. This is not the reality that we thought existed on campuses because we talk about the fair exchange of ideas. This is the marketplace of ideas. I mean, you're going to a campus to obviously excel in an area, but you also want to learn about different areas of life. And what you're saying is it's a selective climate. In other words, if you take a certain stance, you're welcome. If you don't, you're unwelcome.
Just with the pro-Israel stance. And the other stance is fine. I'll tell you more than that. I took a class last semester, and one of the people in my class was from Myanmar. Not a Rohingya, just the general public of Myanmar. And at some point I shared with her my experiences at Colombia and how I'm getting a lot of criticism for being pro-Israel because I assumed she's going through the same things. And no. And although Myanmar has a very bad reputation in the human rights department, clearly worse than Israel, and clearly what's going on there is an actual ethnic cleansing recognized by the UN as ethnic cleansing, and not a situation of conflict and war like in Israel. She was completely surprised, and she told me, "What? I cannot believe this is happening in Colombia. I've never heard anything from anyone on this campus."
So people listening saying to themselves, I'm angry, I don't accept it, and I want to do something about it. One of the things, as I mentioned to you also earlier, was I'm sure Colombia enjoys a fair amount of support, probably disproportionate amount of support from the Jewish community, many alumni, many people who give to Colombia. I don't see anything wrong with graduates of Colombia saying to Colombia, we'll support you, but we're not going to support you as long as Jewish kids are going to be assaulted verbally on campus.
I agree. I totally agree. Fortunately, yesterday at our demonstration, many alums came to support us, and this is very important for us. We want to see these people who graduated from Colombia. People who told me, for example, this person approached and told me he was the head of the pro-Israel club 40 years ago at Colombia, and he did not believe that that is what's going on Colombia's campus today. And this is very important for us to get the support from the alumni. Those who can influence university decisions is great. And even those who can't, just them being there and supporting us and letting us know that Colombia was once very different and it might be able to continue being great for Jewish and pro-Israel students once again, that would be, that's really meaningful for us, yeah.
How about letters of protest? How about just somebody saying, look, I don't have the funds, but I want Colombia to hear my voice?
Yes. So we asked many alumni and members of the Jewish community to write letters to the university. maybe some of the people who hear this show think that, okay, they filed a complaint and okay, that's fine, but making such a noise about one complaint that was filed in January. So I do want to make this clear. We filed this complaint in January. This complaint consists of 13 pages of documented violations of the school's rules of conduct and other university guidelines. It was drafted with the help of lawyers. It's a serious complaint. It's not something I drafted while taking the subway. It was drafted with the help of the Lawfare Project, a serious group of lawyers. We submitted to the school in January, and the process that was supposed to happen is that the student governing board was supposed to call us, and the group that we filed the complaints against them was supposed to be like a courtroom where we make our claims and they make theirs. And the university pulled our case out of the system even before we got to that stage of court. So we never got the due process of actually making our claims. And ever since we met with many university officials who all told us they're not going to do anything. So we...
Why aren't they going to do anything?
Because some of them say it's not anti-Semitic. I disagree, but if they are not complying with the State Department definition of anti-Semitism, there's nothing I can do about it. Other people said it's not violent and they can't do anything because it's freedom of speech.
So you have to be struck physically for them to do something?
Yeah, so this is what we mentioned to them. And they said, no, well, there's public safety and they're going to intervene before it gets violence. But
so I understand the logic on that side. You have a speaker who is pro-Israel,
yes,
who gets up to speak, and there's disruption.
Indeed.
And that person... 9
times in 20 minutes.
And the person can't continue.
True.
Very hard. And they say... And it's anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. They say that's not anti-Semitic, and they have a right to disrupt?
Yes, freedom of speech. And according to the school guidelines, that is not true. You cannot disrupt a speech and in a way that the speaker could not speak, and you cannot, for example, raise signs while there are others sitting behind you so they can't see the speaker. But the university refuses to enforce its own rules. That's the issue. So alums sent letters to the university. We demonstrated yesterday. We're meeting every school official that is willing to meet us, but nothing is happening. And the school is it's very clear to us they're not going to do anything and not going to punish the group who is breaking university rules. And this group, I must tell you that since January and everything that happened with the school is getting the understanding that they can do whatever they want and suffer no consequences. After we filed this complaint and after the university refused to handle it and basically dismissed it, this group sent a private message to one of our board members from the Facebook, like the official Facebook page of that group, saying, why are you such a hateful person? And once they see they suffer no consequences, they can target specific individuals on my board because they know the university is not going to do anything about it. This member of my board who got this message filed a different complaint as an individual, not as a group. And she got the same response, that the university is not going to take care of it.
So I ask you, first of all, was it more difficult serving in the IDF or being a student at Columbia?
Being a student at Columbia.
Really?
In the IDF, most of the time I worked with the Israeli media, and they know Israel and they know the issues. And even when I did work with international media, it was more in my role as an officer in the 80th Division facing ISIS in Sinai, and they all know ISIS and they know what it is. It's not difficult to understand. At Columbia, it's really hard to make them understand what's anti-Semitism.
I once asked someone on a faculty, and by the way, you know that the problem in New York is not just Columbia.
I'm aware of it. Yeah, NYU is getting worse and worse.
I heard about it at Kingsborough, part of the city university system. It's pervasive.
Huh?
So I said to one of the faculty members, can you find a way to bring the parties together, at least to talk to each other? He said no, because they don't want to talk about the other side, not your side. They don't want to have any discussion. They're not looking for any constructive engagement.
It's more than not looking for it. At Columbia, both Jewish Voice for Peace and Students for Justice in Palestine have an anti-normalization policy, which means they are forbidden and they're not willing to talk with Zionist people and entities. So even if we wanted to talk to them, this is against their guidelines. And when we met with the officials from the school, they told us, okay, let's bring you all together and talk. And we said, but they're not willing to talk to us. This is a real issue. Even if we want to solve this diplomatically, that's not an option.
Where are these other groups getting their funding?
I don't know, but mostly from the national organizations of Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish for Peace, Rockefeller Foundation.
I'm ashamed to say that some of the students protesting you are Jewish.
That is true, and there is a whole organization called Jewish Voice for Peace, and this is what they do. They feel that because they're Jewish, they can say, okay, I'm Jewish, so I can criticize and say whatever I want. And the issue is not criticizing Israel. It's okay to say Israel is not perfect. Here, I said it live. Israel is not perfect. It's like any other country. It did mistake. It's doing them. It will continue to do mistakes. This is how a country works. There's not a perfect country. But it's one thing criticizing Israel, and it's a different thing saying Israel has no right to exist. And this is anti-Semitism. When you say every people have the right to self-determination, but the Jewish people, you're anti-Semitic. And when you say there's a certain standard to all nations of the world, but a different to the only Jewish state, you're anti-Semitic, even if you don't want to admit that. Once you have a certain standard for all other people and a different standard only for the Jewish people or the Jewish state or the Jewish race or whatever any other excuse people made over history, you're anti-Semitic. This is the basic line and the most important one.
You know, Ophir, if probably some other group were being targeted, we can think of a number of groups, if they were subjected to such attacks, there would be a loud uproar. The university, I'm sure, would come down very strong and saying, you know, you can't do it to that group. You can't behave this way. It comes to Israel, different story.
And that's amazing. I want all groups to be protected the same way. Yesterday at our protest, we said, my president of the Students Supporting Israel opened the protest by saying this is for all groups on this campus. We want them to be protected, but we just want to be protected as much.
I think back some years ago, you may remember, Ahmadinejad of Iran spoke at Colombia. He was invited to speak at Colombia.
That's true.
So I'm listening to everything you're saying and saying, can you imagine it's okay for Ahmadinejad, who has openly declared, you know, his determination to wipe Israel off the map, who has denied the Holocaust, he can speak at Colombia and receive an audience, and you... But
not the Israeli ambassador to the UN.
Right. It is, again, this is Colombia.
And just for the record, even when he spoke at Colombia, he said horrible things, like there's no LGBTQ individuals in Iran. He said horrible things and nobody stopped him. But when the Israeli ambassador to the UN speaks about Israel and its diplomatic relations, that's too much for the Colombia community to bear.
Well, Diane, I just want to say to you, I'm listening to you, and I'm an admirer. I've been privileged to know your father for some time since he first arrived here, and I know that you're very proud of him.
I am.
Let me tell you this: he's very proud of you. We're all very proud. A young person that stands up and doesn't camouflage her identity, but on the contrary, stands proudly for what she believes is right. And we stand with you, and I urge everyone to become involved. This is a battle for all. We are involved in other battles. This is our battle, but others should join with us. This is not just for Jews. We need a strong community to say, by offending them, you're offending us. Because today it's you. The next day it's someone else.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Thank you so much for
Rabbi.
For being with us, and I look forward to celebrating a triumph at Columbia University. We're not there, obviously, but
we will be.
We will be. Okay, I like that attitude.
Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, celebrating 35 years of religion on the line on 77 WABC.
Sherman's Flatbush Memorial Chapel Incorporated, established in 1898, the first funeral chapel in Brooklyn to serve the Jewish community. For 115 years and 4 generations, Sherman's Flatbush Memorial Chapel has been, still is, one of the few family-owned and operated funeral homes in New York. So whether you're in Brooklyn, the boroughs, Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, anywhere, Sherman's can arrange and conduct services graveside at your local synagogue or in one of their beautiful chapels. They can also make arrangements for services in Israel. Sherman's can pre-arrange funerals so loved ones are not burdened, whether or not they're on Medicaid. And Sherman's can also prepare for unveilings through their monument company. Sherman's Flatbush Memorial Chapel is located at 1283 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, between Avenues I and J. Be assured you're in excellent hands with Joseph Sherman and the family. When you walk through the doors, I've often said you become a member of the Sherman's family. The number is 1-718-377-7300. That's 1-718-377-7300. Or visit them online at shermanschapel.com. Let Sherman's assist you and your family during your most difficult time.